Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jerry Callanan, and I'm one of the leads for the Slack team here in the Nordics. So you're all very welcome to this session. Thanks for all coming along today. I'm going to talk about Slack as a digital HQ. And I suppose, in essence, that's really moving from, bricks and mortars HQ to your HQ in the cloud. I suppose, as a little bit of background and introduction to that, really over the last number of decades or whatever, we've been gradually moving from physical to digital. And I suppose the big change for that was the pandemic. And I suppose typically this morning, it was a bit like it was a couple of years ago. Coming in here today, lashing rain, loads of traffic, metro wasn't working. It just brought back memories of, your daily commutes as it was, throughout the last number of decades. The traditional way of doing work, 9 to 5, going into the office, in and out every day, school runs, etc., etc. I suppose we're now flipping from that because of the pandemic, and this has now reached a breaking point, and we're moving into a digital world, and that's been accelerated over the last 2 years or so. Whereas now there's more a remote working model. People are working to their own personal needs, their own timelines. Some people prefer to work in the morning, some people prefer to work in the afternoons and in the evenings, and that's really what it is. And work from home, work from remote offices, work from different offices, it's all changed and it's all accelerating. We still have the hybrid work model, and that's what we've arrived at now. But 76% of workers now want flexible remote working options. But at the same time, people still miss the in-person workplace conversations. So how do we address that, and how do we actually balance that through the digital HQ and through the Slack platform? Really, the missing pieces that employees need from a Slack and a Salesforce perspective is the digital HQ. And I'm going to go a little bit more into the digital HQ now and what that actually means. So a definition really of the digital HQ is it's having no barriers in terms of physical locations, conversations that you're having, where you're working from, how you do your customer meetings in person, remotely. And it's really uniting all your teams, whether they're your internal teams, working with your partners, working with your customers, working with your employees across different time zones, different locations, different parts of the world and different regions. And then it's being able to access those communications and working with those customers and partners and employees faster and more productively. And then as well, it's been able to utilize now the hybrid working model that we're all used to doing. So I'll just go a bit more detail into that and what's maybe stopping us doing that at the moment, because as you'll probably rightly point out, how come this isn't actually happening now and we're not doing it? So part of that is it's pretty chaotic. We've seen that over the last couple of years. On average, each large organization is using something like 1,000 different applications. And they're your applications, whether it's Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud from the Salesforce perspective. But there's other applications you could be using there, your email applications as well, your Zooms, your GChats, your Workdays, your expense solutions, your HR solutions. And you can recall a lot of people when you're working in the office as well, you had multiple screens, working off different screens, and even within your screens, I think the average tabs people have open is something like 30 different tabs. So really a bit messy and a bit chaotic. And this is where Slack actually comes in, because Slack really is an engagement layer. And when you're within Slack, you're managing your different system events and human events, but it's all within the one interface. So for example, when I'm in Slack and I go into Slack, it's my digital HQ as such, but within it of all my integrations with all the applications that I use. So instead of going into I could use Salesforce Sales Cloud, Salesforce Service Cloud, my Zoom, for example, which I spend a lot of time on, but I access them all through the application, through the Slack application. So I don't have to open separate windows for Salesforce. So if I want to update a Salesforce record, I go in via Slack and do it through the integration. If I want to kick off a Zoom conversation, I go into it through the Zoom integration with Slack. And for example, my Google Calendar is also within Slack, so I get a reminder, if there's a Zoom meeting starting off, I get a reminder in Slack that the Zoom meeting is kicking off from my calendar, integrated, and it opens straight out of Slack as well. So everything is within the one interface for me. And this is where a lot of you might have seen maybe Slack previously. Actually, just a quick question. How many people here in the room have actually used Slack before or currently use it? Okay, that's a pretty impressive. But a lot of people would associate maybe Slack with direct messaging and collaboration. But this is where the value starts to come in because it's your integration. And it's the same for developers. They have their integrations with the tools they use, like Jira, GitHub, etc. So this is where the value starts to come in. And also workflows. You can also do workflows within Slack. So for example, in the digital world, if I have a problem, let's say, with a piece of software on my laptop that I'm actually using, and I log a case, but it's out of hours at 6 o'clock in the evening, I know when I come in the morning, the way the digital hub works for us is that this will be passed on to the US, to San Francisco, where we have our headquarters, and somebody there will actually come online and do it during their business hours, and then next morning I come in and the actual issue is resolved. So that's a more practical example of how the digital HQ would work for me. So really, in summary, Slack is your digital HQ. It connects your people, your partners, and your systems. And really, one of the key areas of Slack I love is Slack Connect. And I'll ask you another question here. For example, I know a lot of you would use email, but how many people, for example, would have more than 100 unopened emails in their inboxes? Okay, more than 500? Okay, more than 1,000? Okay, so some people have more than 1,000. And so Slack Connect actually eliminates this because all the emails you'd normally collaborate and send, let's say, to your customers, to your business partners, whatever, this can now be done securely within the one platform using Slack Connect. So for example, if I'm working on an opportunity with a customer and we're trying to find a solution for the actual customer on the Slack platform, I might be working with a local partner, for example, Accenture or Fluido or whatever. So I set up a Slack Connect channel with the customer on it, with the partner on it, and then with any other technical resources I need in-house. And then we collaborate on the actual solution for the customer, and we communicate within that channel securely using single sign-on as well. So that eliminates emails, email threads, and that's one of the beauties of Slack Connect. And again, you can do it outside your digital, outside your old bricks and mortars. That's gone. This is doing it within your Slack Digital HQ. So also within the last year or so, due to demand from our customer base, we've come up with a couple of new specific solutions. So we have a digital HQ for sales, for service, and for marketing as well. And so a practical example of what, for example, digital HQ for service would be, for example, if you had Service Cloud and you have cases, and you're working to resolve those cases with your customers, and you're using Service Cloud for that. But let's say a case isn't going well, or it's delayed, or it's going to miss its SLA. Well, within Slack, you can set up workflows whereby you're alerted to that particular, as a manager, or an escalation point, you're alerted to that particular fact, and then it creates a channel automatically and brings in the right people in terms of technical support, and even sometimes the customer if necessary. And then the workflows enable you to actually swarm that case. So the case still works within Salesforce, but you're further leveraging your Salesforce investment here by actually swarming the case and bringing it to a faster resolution. And that's just an example of what we're doing within the digital HQ for service. And we've seen from our customers, IBM, T-Mobile, et cetera, some of the returns there, based on the surveys we've done, some of the returns investment that those customers are getting from both their Slack investment and their Salesforce investment as well. So in summary, I've touched very briefly on it today in terms of Slack being your digital HQ and what it actually means. And I hope that you're getting a little bit more really today about getting outside of just direct messaging, instead of using WhatsApp or email or whatever, and moving on to sort of where you get the real value, which is the integrations and then the workflows that you can enable within Slack for your organization. And really, this enables you and your employees to actually work from anywhere and enable the digital HQ as such. And we're going to be, in terms of demonstration of this, if you haven't seen Slack before or you want to see some of our new functionality, we're going to have a teaser session just outside there in just over an hour's time at quarter to 3. And we'll have a number of people there. So in terms of the demo, if there's any questions you have or specifics, or myself and the team will be at that. So now I think one of the best things is always to actually hear from one of our customers who's actually using the platform, because it's worth 10 times what I can say when you actually hear direct from the customer. So I'm going to introduce you to another one of our leads here in the Nordics, Kelly, and then Adrian from Wolt. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. That was brilliant.
Thank you.
So, yeah, my name's Kelly, and I work alongside Jerry, as he mentioned, within Slack. I've been here for 3 years, and in that time, I've had the pleasure of working with Wolt, and just to really see the hyper-growth has truly been phenomenal. So, Adrian, thank you so much for joining today. His session this morning was brilliant. So can we just ask you first off a little bit about your role at Wolt and what, yeah.
Yes, as shared this morning, I'm heading the IT team in Wolt, and basically if we think about IT, our thinking is IT is basically the enabler of our business units. We are a support function, making sure that our business can serve our customers better.
Brilliant. And why did you choose Slack? It's a very broad question, I know.
Yes. Let me start with a simple example. If you think about how people organize email, they create folders, or many do, and then they place their emails, the incoming emails, in those folders. Now, the interesting thing, what's happening, everyone does it for himself. That means everyone has his mailbox somehow organized. And we realize that email is maybe not too efficient. And then if we take it to Slack, it actually allowed the organization, the HQ, or the whole group of people working together to start organizing information, meaning instead of having everyone with his own folder structure, with his own structure, how he structures his information, we started to realize if we go with Slack, people can actually together define those channels and then have the information in the same channel which belongs together. Even more important, we can add certain regulatory policies. Let's say there's information that has to be deleted after some time. It's very simple to manage that in a Slack channel because you can just apply a policy. If you think about email boxes, it's a nightmare to regulate mailboxes, to apply policies, especially in the Nordics, because there are certain privacy laws which make it very, very complicated to access private personal data.
Sure, no, that's great. And can you just share some other examples of actually how you use Slack across the Wolt business?
Yes, I mean, the first thing is we use it to structure our information, to get access very efficiently to information. And to think a bit more even on that, if you take existing tools, other collaboration tools, what people do normally, they take a look, they create some workspaces, some items there, and they think, okay, it's not going to work for us or not. But the thing is, at scale, you will immediately see like 10,000 channels popping up where people work in. And in Wolt, it went even further. We started to see that we can get additional benefit out of Slack by integrating it into the business processes. Now, let me make an example. If you have a simple approval flow, like holiday approval or something, what's going to happen in a classical system, it may come in by email. but is it one individual person handling that approval flow? So you might have 10 person getting the same email. All of those 10 people have to read that email. Sure. Now, when we are sending that approval request into a Slack channel, it's actually the whole group who just sees, oh, okay, somebody took care of that item already, and you can make it interactive because Slack has this, like, I don't even know the technical term, but you can add buttons to messages, like sure. approve buttons, deny buttons, and then you can go much further with integrating it into business processes. That means Slack was more or less becoming the tool for us to steer the companies. We have alerts from systems going into Slack channels for tailor-made for those alerts. We have other information like action items which go to the Slack channels for those teams who have to take action and so on. And if there is uncertainty about a certain item, you can even facilitate the discussion because people can immediately raise the discussion on that approval item. Hey, is this actually valid or do we have to look into it further?
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And bring people into the conversation if you need to. And it's really valuable if someone's on vacation, you know, that time saved when they come back from holiday and something's dealt with is invaluable. And in terms of the roadmap, so where does Slack feature? What are your plans with Slack?
I think if we think about Slack today, as mentioned already in the morning, besides all the benefits of structuring the information, the benefits of basically having the business processes integrated there, we have also the culture part, where we have the emoticons, where we have people basically expressing their emotions in Slack. And we were going to see that growing in Wolt. We are in dialogue with Slack to basically also make sure that this cultural journey, that it gets more measurable, that we get things like social distances out of employees inside Slack, meaning understanding who are the people working the most together in Slack, to then make other conclusions, like what information should we provide to them. It can be in a CRM system, it can be in another system, to basically show, hey, the people very close to you work on those 10 deals, they do this in this system, to make people, again, more efficient just by the know-how which is already there. And I think we were going to see Slack evolving quite a lot into these areas. The second part we had also was the Slack Connect, which has been mentioned. We see a lot of benefits by actually collaborating with other organizations through Slack Connect. And it has, again, two very, very important advantages. First of all, spam. In the emails, we get a lot of spam or potentially also sales notifications, which we don't want to follow up during the day. I mean, it's something we can maybe walk through once per day. And in Slack, we may get more relevant information. Hence, Slack Connect enables us to easily separate those two topics without having everyone setting up email rules and so on. The second thing is a simple cost issue. With Slack Connect, we basically can add people from other organizations running also Slack without actually having to pay double licenses. I mean, Wolt pays one license, the other organization is on a free tier or pays also a license, and that allows us to keep the costs also down to collaborate.
Which is brilliant. Great. And in terms of your sort of favorite feature in Slack, what would that be?
It's changing all the time. Recently, one of the favorites was the huddles. We had, like, our support teams during the Corona pandemic were staying from time to time online in like this more or less like a Zoom meeting where everyone could just push to talk if they wanted to say something, to communicate with the other people working in customer support. And then Slack introduced those huddles, and we could easily enable those teams to just like be in this virtual room, say something if there is something happening in the support. And that was obviously my favorite during the Corona times. Now, as people come back to the office and they basically work in the office together, they don't have to go into a huddle anymore. And at that point, it shifted a little bit to the workflows in Slack, where I think this is the most underestimated and most valuable feature, because it allows employees themselves to actually go into the tool, design something what they need to make their teams work more efficient, and they don't have to reach out to IT or any other expert of the domain. That means I would say today it's obviously workflows.
And workflows are really easy to build, aren't they, in terms of any different department can do that themselves. They don't have to be very technical, would you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They are easy to build, but they have also quite rich possibilities to extend them. And
Yes.
that's actually, we use that many times with some technical interviews to ask candidates to just submit a message into one of our Slack channels through a workflow and the incoming webhooks, where most of it is set up, but it really shows how easy candidates actually grasp how to communicate with those modern APIs and things. And I mean, very, very simple, sending a Slack message from any tool into a Slack channel from Wolt is more or less one line of command line code, or then some use all of these modern workflow engines like Zephyr, Integromat, and what's out there. And it basically shows how easy it is to integrate with Slack with any other tool.
No, that's brilliant. And before we let you go today, we've taken a lot of your time up today. What's your favorite emoji in Slack?
In the emoji I love the most is obviously the Wolt heart. We have on Slack, we have a heart, which is an emoticon. It's the Wolt color, and it represents basically all the values we are standing for as Wolt.
Brilliant, that's great. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thanks everyone for joining, and please join us at 2:45 for the demo. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.